Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Now, I'm going to review a book that normally I would never review, simply because I consider this type of book to be one of a plant coffee table book, as opposed to a practical guide to gardening. But the Encyclopedia of Plants and Flowers, revised and updated from DK, is excellent. Now, it was originally published in 1989, which would really make you stop and think. But also what you'll find is that when they did go and update it, they did update it in 2002, and then they went and they updated it again in 2011. And when they did the last update, they added over 1,000 plants. So this book covers more than 8,000 plants. So I'm paging through, I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, these pictures are color accurate to the plant material, and there's a ton of them. And I don't mean a few, I mean a ton of them, okay? So, in other words, this book can impress you, but it can also give you the idea of exactly what you are going to achieve or should be achieving. Probably sort of like a cookbook, like when you do your cooking, and it never looks just like the picture in the cookbook, okay? But it still tastes as good, and it still is, let's hope, edible. But this book in itself is excellent. I looked at it, I paged through it, and I liked the way it handled the plant material. It goes through, it covers areas of all different types of plants, such as bamboos and grasses and perennials and trees and shrubs and flowering trees and evergreens, you name it, annuals, biennials, roses. It covers it. So it's a good practical book. And then I started looking at the way that the book is set up. First of all, it has a visual plant key, which will help you understand how to identify a plant visually. Because if you're doing it botanically, it is very, very onerous. And you got to know what you're doing. As a result, that one is actually quite practical. But it also has an inspirational type of pictures and text and describing formal, informal gardens, etc. Because you're going to have to figure out whether you're going to do a country garden, a prairie garden, a wildflower garden, or formal gardens and a desert garden. If you're going to do a desert garden, fine, but you better be able to climatically be able to pick the plant material to be able to achieve it. If you're in a warmer climate, you might have to do a tropical garden. The plants in this book range generally from zone 9 to zone 3, which means you get to pick the plants that are hardy for your area. It breaks it all down, makes you aware of the plant material that you can utilize, and gives you ideas of different types. So whether you're planting a garden where you're going to have a room that is a white room, a pink room only, a formal garden, it's going to maybe have hard surfacing, it's going to have gravel surfacing, or even turf grass. All of these things can be considered and covered in this book. If you're looking into the more, let's say, the more contemporary gardens, it's sort of covered. They look a little modern, and of course, they, in looking modern, are clean, cut, and very asymmetrical, etc. But plant material that you put in them softens them. It's covered. You have to assess your site, and this is covered because it's so important that you understand the soil and the site, the amount of sunlight, moisture, temperatures, the zones, etc. So you're going to pick the plant material to do the design, and you've picked out different ones. It covers seasonality. So if you want a particular room to be a spring room, a June room, or a summer room, or even a fall or winter room, you could do it. So that you can have aspects of each part of these seasons in different parts of your garden. You can also mix them and do a complete garden where you have color continually throughout the seasons all the way across. But then you have to utilize the shapes, the colors, and the textures of each of the plant material, not just the blooming time or the time of interest. In some cases, in the winter or fall, you may be looking at the twig color, and I'm thinking here of the cornice. The fall colors on some of the true red maples, not the Japanese maples, not the Norway maples. We're talking about the true Canadian red maple varieties. So, but this book also helps you with that because it has and covers the color wheel. And a lot of people know what the color wheel is, but often don't utilize it or know how to. And it's covered in here, and covered in here well enough that you will find it easy enough to adapt and to absorb and to utilize. They're going to talk about light, shade, interest in the seasons. They're also going to give you some basic planting techniques, whether it's in the ground or in containers. It's covered. You have to think that maybe there are areas that have to be fertilized more, weeded more, watered more, mulching, or composted more. This you'll know by the soil type and by the plant material and the exposure, etc., that you're working with. You're certainly not going to plant a plant that absolutely hates wet feet in heavy clay soil, because every spring it's going to suffer so badly it's going to either deteriorate or die. Now, it also covers plant selectors. Now, this is where you're going to have a lot of fun, because plants for sandy soils is covered. Doesn't matter if it's a tree, shrub, perennials, roses, bamboo, you name it, annuals, perennials, it's covered. Same thing happens for clay soil. This is the section I should look at. Also, neutral to acidic soils. This is one of the areas that most gardeners don't understand, don't realize that it is extremely important, that no matter what fertilizer, what care you give, if the pH of the soil is wrong, the plant never is that successful. It is, how shall I say, anemic all the time, no matter what you do, simply because it cannot utilize the micronutrients and nutrients that are present. So, go for it. There is plants that love limestone. The Niagara area where we are actually is the bedrock is all limestone. Okay? Plants for coastal regions is covered. Plants for exposed sites. Drought-tolerant plants. In most cases, remember that when you're dealing with drought-tolerant plants, you have to get them well enough established for the first 1 or even 2 years before you can consider them truly drought-tolerant. Hedges, they're sort of fallen by the way, but they're covered. Windbreaks are not, particularly if you're out in the country. Architectural plants are covered, which are nice in the fact that these plants have such a distinctive shape, color, texture, that they become specimens. And a specimen may be only one plant, and the garden is built around it. It's usually going to draw your eye to that part of the garden, and the plant material around it is going to literally dress it. Okay? So utilize that, and you'll have a very pretty garden that people will go from the moment they step into your yard, their eye will be drawn to it. Okay? And if you think about it, that means that those architectural plants should be welcoming you somewhere near your front door. Ground covers are covered, plants for quick cover, plants for dry shade. This is important. It's one of the harder ones to do because there are a lot of dry shade. Plants for walls and for paving stones and crevices. This is something that we need to do a little bit more of. There is a movement now to do more and more dry walls, particularly with all the limestone that we have around here. So we like to go and use the dry walls as actual planting walls, and the plants are covered in this book. As you can see, this book really does cover enough that is worth the money. Okay? Plants for containers. Plants for walls and trellises and baskets. Fragrant plants. I like this one. Now, here's one that's underutilized in most gardens, and that's plants with aromatic foliage. And that one is also should be addressed in your garden. A lot of times, this particular area, the fragrance and aromatic flavor, that too, foliage is not addressed, but should be addressed in a garden, particularly with people who have visual acuity problems, because they can utilize and enjoy the garden simply by smelling and touching, and that's important as well. Fruit, seed pods are all covered in here. Flowers for cutting. That's something. It's nice to be able to go out in your garden and cut a whole bunch of flowers and go take them in and put them on a vase, give them to somebody who's been kind, who's maybe shared plants with you. Then utilize these cut flowers to reward them. And we all as gardeners like to be rewarded with flower, color, etc. So all these different trees are done and gone through. The varieties in here, in most cases, cover the wide range. So if you're talking about magnolia trees, you're going to get the ones that are least hardy, more hardy, etc., and color. Okay? So you've got the different ones. Bark is covered. Ornamental bark is underrated. Okay? Acer grisseum is beautiful. Okay? But very, very few people actually utilize the striped barks, such as Acer Davidii. So it's important that you also enjoy this. So bark can be done as well, and it's covered in here. Now, we're talking small flowering trees, big trees, fruit trees, and by fruit I don't mean just the edibles, but the others as well. We've got conifers that are covered in all sizes. They even cover podocarpus. Now, for many of us, there's no way we're ever going to grow a podocarpus, but will it be that one great plant that is out in the garden for the summer and in for the winter? Definitely. If you like the look of that one and it's hardy, try putting out in your garden Cyadopodes. They do cover dwarf conifers, which is always important. Shrubs of all kinds and blooming times. I mean, right from the witch hazels. And the other thing I really liked in here was the good selection of both hostas and the heucheras and the heucherellas, but also the Christmas rose, the helleborus. All covered very, very well. Hydrangeas are covered well. Tropical flowers, right from hardy fuchsias to peonies, etc. Even callistemon, which of course you're not going to grow in our climate, but you can utilize that one as an indoor-outdoor plant to add interest to your garden. And it could be one of the architectural plants or specimen plants in your garden that gets lifted every year. So there are a ton of plants in here covered, as I said, over 8,000. And I want you to go through and look at them. Pick your colors, pick your design, your things. Roses. They have an excellent selection of roses here. I mean, let's be honest, there's a billion roses out there. But they do cover them very, very well. Gives you ideas. Because let's be honest, the roses that sometimes grow in your area don't grow in others. Okay? But things that are, let's put it this way, around everywhere, like the fairy. I mean, who hasn't seen the fairy rose? I mean, everybody. When I was in Holland, I visited one of the gardens. What rose was it? The only rose plants she had in her garden? The fairy. So I want you to go through, take a look, and plan your garden seasonally. I want them to be colored. I want them to be interesting. And I want some nice, interesting plant combinations that'll give you color at different seasons and interest in your garden in different seasons. So that, let's say, in the fall, winter, or very early spring, you can look out your window on a nasty day and say, oh, isn't that beautiful? I love that. And enjoy your garden from the inside when you can't get outside. It's inspirational. It gives you that itchy fingers to get out there and do things. And I want you to go ahead and get this book. Very seldom do I say this about a book that is more of an encyclopedia table plant book. This one is well worth the money. And you know how thrifty I am. Okay? So that is the Encyclopedia of Plants and Flowers, revised and updated. The editor-in-chief is Christopher Brickell from DK Publishing. So, do it. Go out there, buy it. If you can't find it, have them order it for you, because it's gorgeous and it's mine. Okay? I just found this plant book and I have not seen it ever. So, excellent. Go out, buy it, and give this also as a gift to people that you know are real plant lovers. They'll love you for giving it to them. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is I'm thinking Mother's Day here, people. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.